Pereira. Pakistan has said it will participate in a video conference of SAARC member countries proposed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi to combat the fast-spreading coronavirus pandemic that has killed over 5,000 people globally. Prime Minister Narendra Modi reached out to the 8-member regional grouping on Friday and pitched for a video conference among the leaders of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation to chalk out a strong strategy to combat coronavirus outbreak. Pakistan responded positively to Prime Minister Modi's proposal, saying it was ready to participate in the conference, acknowledging that coordinated efforts were needed to minimize the threat posed by the deadly coronavirus. In a series of tweets, the Prime Minister said, "I would like to propose that the leadership of SAARC nations chalk out a strong strategy to fight coronavirus. We would discuss via video conferencing ways to keep our citizens healthy. Together, we can set an example to the world and contribute to a healthier planet." Prime Minister Modi's suggestion was backed by all member states of SAARC. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze SAARC fighting coronavirus together. Joining me on the program today are Ashok Sajjanhar, former ambassador. Also with us on the program is Rajendra Harshe, foreign affairs expert, and Pramit Pal Chaudhary, Foreign Affairs Editor of the Hindustan Times. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Ambassador, I'd like to begin the program with you. Your thoughts on this initiative that the Prime Minister has come up with, really as far as coordinating with all the SAARC countries via video conferencing to try and, sort out what this coronavirus has caused.
I think it's a very welcome move because for a variety of reasons. Number one, first of all, I think it shows up India's leadership as far as the region is concerned. It shows up Prime Minister Modi's leadership as far as all the countries are concerned. And I think it was put very appropriately and very correctly by the Prime Minister of Bhutan, where he says, that this is leadership and this is what we want. And I think the world over, when we've been trying to deal with the coronavirus, and as it has, initially even the WHO said it was not such a big issue, then it was an emergency, and now it has become a pandemic. And we see, although the numbers might have come down in terms of infected and those who have died as a result of this in China, but across the world, in so many other countries, it is on a rampage, so to say. So it is, the problem is there. We do not have a cure to it as yet. And what people are saying is that the world needs leadership at this stage. And I think Prime Minister Modi, by sending out this message, has very clearly stated that as far as the region is concerned, India is ready, is willing, and has the capacity to take up the leadership and take this issue forward. The second aspect is on the issue of SAARC itself. As you know, that the last SAARC summit took place in Kathmandu in November 2014, so which is a good 5.5 years or so that it has happened. And the next SAARC summit was to take place in 2016 in Islamabad. But just before that, we had the Pathankot incident, we had the Uri incident in September of 2016, as a result of which India said that the circumstances were not appropriate. Also Bangladesh, also Bhutan, also Afghanistan had said, that they were not ready to participate in that summit. So SAARC has been in a limbo. And I think it is a good opportunity to give it an impetus and to give it a push. And I think this is what Prime Minister Modi's initiative has done. Right. And by just coming out with this, he has, I think, demonstrated by his actions that there might be problems between two member countries, our problem with Pakistan. But I think when challenges come, we have to rise above those problems and we have to try and work together. And of course, through video conferencing, seek out best practices and how we deal with this issue.
Absolutely. I come to no one being left behind in just a bit. But before that, let's go back to a point that the ambassador was making earlier. Professor, there is clearly a problem that the world is facing. Clearly, South Asia is also being affected by this, and the SAARC countries in particular as well. India clearly showing leadership really and trying to take everyone along to try and find a solution or to ensure that the pain is eased as a result of this? Professor.
I'll tell you what, carrying the debate forward with what Ashok has been saying, I would make two fundamental points and 3 points connected to coronavirus. Two fundamental points are this entire South Asia is Indo-centric region. And if you look at it, India is really at the center culturally. If you look at it, it shares languages like Tamil, Bangla within the region. It shares religions, all kinds, all Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and civilization also. So it is connected to all the countries in South Asia. There is nothing common between Sri Lanka and Afghanistan, but India has commonality with all. So culturally and civilizationally, it's an Indo-centric region. The second point is that if you look at India, its vast populace, large land mass, industrial preparedness, trained manpower, atomic power also, then economic development, technological development, all make it very, very major country, and surely the region leader. And our Prime Minister spoke on behalf of that India, which is reasonably powerful, and perhaps suppose some moment of resentment is there among neighboring countries, which I have myself experienced when I was teaching in South Asian University, when neighbors of India are always bothered about hegemonic ambitions of India. This is a time when India can take humanitarian measures and go forward. The 3 other points concerning coronavirus that I wanted to make, first was that it will challenge Prime Minister Modi and other leaders of the entire SAARC in a way how we deal with uncertainty. Because this is an era of uncertainty, and how we will handle uncertainty. That's a kind of challenge to leadership. Second challenge to my mind is it will challenge and also test our health system, because health system as well as economy are going to be at a risk when this is on the treatment. And fortunately, India has extraordinarily competent doctors, viral centers, good virologists, good epidemiologists, and they can be perhaps doing work for SAARC because they are already doing some work in Iran. So this is second. And the third is actually, this is one important point where politicians have to earn trust of their people. Somewhere there is trust deficit. So politicians turn petty and start kind of getting into petty fights of SAARC. Then this is the time when all SAARC can be united and show the world that this is one organization which can stand up in the times of crisis. And what Ambassador was saying, that all this while somewhere lackluster performance of SAARC can be replaced by some dynamic organization, and Prime Minister Modi perhaps is the right person who can give that right kind of dynamic move forward. That is what I thought I would make it.
All right, so Pramit, as far as the WHO is concerned, it's doing its bit, of course. But what other coordination are we seeing really from states as well as from world leaders to try and address this particular issue?
The primary, there are a couple of big, there have been a number of attempts since the SARS crisis going back to 2016. One is the global health regulatory system that was set up in 2016, 65 countries that are involved. And second is a joint international program on vaccination, which is based out of Denmark, if I remember correctly, and which has been focusing on exactly this type of things, pandemic influenza being rated has traditionally been rated as the most likely global pandemic, at least for the past decade. So there have been a number of international attempts already ongoing to try and do this. However, they have not been all that successful, in part because various countries have cut their budgets. There have been a lot of countries don't have the health capacity or the scientific capacity. Right now, the WHO, in fact, was struggling with budget cuts just before this pandemic broke out. So right now, yes, there hasn't been that much at the political level to work out programs. It will be raised, I believe, at the G20 summit. It's coming up in Riyadh, and there are already attempts to bring that to some form of coordination. But global coordination has been poor, and most nations have, in fact, focused completely on their national concerns. So you've seen effectively artificial shortages on medical supplies. Because the global supply chains are largely focused around China for the hard stuff, base chemicals for pharmaceuticals. there are only 3 or 4 countries, including India, which are producers of generic drugs. And kits, testing kits have been a huge issue globally. The government of Iran recently issued a list of requests from the international community, which included a request for 2.3 million coronavirus testing kits, which is virtually impossible for any rest of the world to provide, given everybody has a shortage right now. So that type of coordination is absolutely necessary, but the real big issue that remains and will hopefully be addressed after this present crisis is an attempt to preempt such viruses. The swine flu, what's so-called H1N1 virus, for example, the batches, we now effectively predict the virus before each season. It still continues every year. In August and September, the pharma companies in India release the batches for the vaccinations for H1N1. We inoculate ourselves, or our children at least, normally by September and October, and then the H1N1 season ends in December. But we barely pay any attention to H1N1 anymore, because in effect what happens is they have a surveillance system, they pick out the various strains, they work on the vaccine, and is effectively done well before the season takes off. That's what you need to handle a coronavirus or anything. I mean, this is a member of the SARS family. And that's something that is desperately needed globally.
Right.
And right now we don't have it. Hopefully the present crisis, but I suspect, knowing how the world works, we probably have 2 or 3 crises before we accept that something like this has to be done.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. So, Ambassador, let's come back to SAARC and the Prime Minister's announcement really as far as video conferencing is concerned. Going back to a point that you were making, and the point that I want to raise later on, of course, is not leaving anyone behind. Despite our differences, despite what has happened in the recent past with Pakistan, we have also taken Pakistan along.
No, absolutely. I think this is what this provides an opportunity to the region as well as to India to show its leadership, particularly, as you mentioned, that there is so much of uncertainty as far as the world is concerned, as far as the world order is concerned. The economy was not doing too well at all. It has taken another hit as far as the COVID-19 is concerned. And all countries in this region are afflicted by it, even other countries around. And I think India has a great track record as far as dealing with such pandemics is concerned and such disasters is concerned. Even under the current circumstances, I think the manner in which our system has really been able to come up and has been able to acquit itself, I would say, very creditably. That notwithstanding the fact, we have such huge borders, it's an open to so many people, but we have just about 80 known cases. Of course, investigation could reveal that there are many more. There are 2 unfortunate deaths that have taken place. But you look at countries much further away, with much better developed healthcare systems, and there you have both in terms of those who are affected by it in the hundreds, and those who have in the thousands, and those who have died in the hundreds. So I think India has done well so far. Even if we look at our past performance, 2 years ago we were afflicted by the Nipah virus, and you would remember it came from it was discovered in Kerala. And again, if my memory serves me correctly, on a particular day they found the strain, they immediately sent it, and within 2 days or so all the medical professionals were there. Within another day, WHO had been notified about it, so that all the protective measures were taken. Although this happened, I remember, in 2 of the districts in Kerala, but the warning signs were given to the whole state and to other states also. So I think we have been very proactive. In that sense, I would say that China has not really been a responsible nation, because it was sometime in, and I think that is a problem that has starkly come out, that when it is a centrally controlled system and centrally controlled economy, then the people at the top are more keen to preserve and protect their image and profile, and not really looking at what the long-term damage is. So even as far as this Wuhan virus is concerned, I think sometime in November it was discovered.
November 17th, I think.
Yes, and it took right up to the end of December. And even after that, what the Chinese were saying, that there is no need for any restriction on travel. And I think they were able to persuade even the Director General of the WHO to say that, the risk is not very high and there should not be travel restrictions and so on and so forth.
Sure.
And I think that has compounded this whole issue, because if the travel restrictions had been put in place right at the beginning, we would not have had so many cases in Italy, in Iran, in South Korea, in Japan. And even as far as India is concerned, the biggest problem is people who are coming in from outside. So, but we have taken all measures, whether putting in place travel restrictions, hygiene, in terms of social distancing, in terms of quarantining, in terms of isolation. So I think India has done that. India has huge experience. India has great expertise. As Rajan was saying, we have more than 51 virology laboratories.
Right.
And we are setting up more than 50 more so that we can quickly test and determine where all who all are affected by it. And
Sure.
we can help the smaller countries, whether it is Maldives, whether it is Nepal, it is Bhutan, it is Afghanistan. I think those countries where this expertise and the personnel, the human resources are limited,
Sure.
India can definitely step in and make a difference to the advantage of those countries as also of the region.
Absolutely. Professor, is this also an opportunity for a revival of SAARC, maybe, because, we've seen a lull in activities of late?
Very, very interesting point, actually. I should react to it in few ways. One, that very interestingly, when India faces any kind of crisis, it always comes out brilliantly. So it's a country which knows how to face crisis. Normal situation, there is always infighting. So India will do well, because now also the way Ashok was arguing, we have taken very prompt steps as far as our airports and seaports are concerned. Our scientists are very active, and it's a rare moment where our health ministry, home ministry, as well as foreign affairs ministry are coordinating their efforts so intelligently and together. And without fear, panic, India is trying to keep this entire thing under control. Interestingly also, we have 3,005 kilometer worth border with China, but it has not done as much damage as we thought that Wuhan will do. The second point that I want to make, which is important, I thought, was, Singapore had a habit of learning from the past, and they have also no democracy like India. But from SARS of 2003, they learned a great deal, and they have been the best country in terms of, containing this virus. But as far as India is concerned, we have also capacities, large country, large size. And what you are saying is, whatever India has to do, it has to do democratically and also carry it on. That is one possible hurdle. And in many South Asian countries also there is democracy. What Ashok was saying, that Chinese did some kind of irresponsible acts, but they have also contained the virus in Wuhan. Because they quarantined, they kind of went for brutal treatment and tried to control it. But it still spread in Italy and other parts of the world. As far as India is concerned, it has surely the capacity to carry the neighboring countries of South Asia, which are also democratic, and India has a way with them. Because there is some kind of, this entire cooperation related to fighting coronavirus, this virus cannot be possible without India's proper participation.
Sure.
And that's where the kind of, any project of SAARC also is not possible, why it can't be conceived also. So if India can take a lead, and it is taking the lead, there are all possibilities that SAARC somewhere can be revived. And it's ironical that one crisis brings us together, because I was very surprised in the afternoon that Pakistan reacted so promptly and they are willing to join. That means somewhere Article 370 Kashmir issue, issues related to terror, we are all forgetting them, and that's a very healthy side.
Sure.
So it's the same thing applies to Bangladesh. They may have issues related to boundary, border, and entire India with neighboring countries. There are several kinds of issues related to ethno-nationalism, related to borders, and suddenly we have decided to be one, and that's a great opportunity. I think if it allows us to meet our minds and get together, maybe political problems are very easy to sort out when you're mentally ready to sort out one such major major crisis and calamity which is threatening us and our lives. And if we succeed in it, maybe we'll again talk on very friendly terms to work out such minor problems as border or ethno-nationalism or any area like even Kashmir.
Sure.
So it's a very sure shot that we'll do it. Even trade can improve if this is done.
Okay, all right. So, Pramit, talking about Pakistan joining and wanting to be a part of the video conference, there's also, not too much information about at what level of participation it will be really from Pakistan's side. Is there any clarity on that front?
No, but since if Prime Minister Modi is, and the other SAARC heads of state and heads of government will be on the conference, we assume Prime Minister Imran Khan will also be on board. And it'll also be a forerunner to the fact that in September, if I'm correct, the SCO summit of heads of government will be held in India, and we're still waiting to see whether Imran Khan will come to that. And if that, so then that would be we basically initiate a breakthrough, at least in terms of dialogue at the highest level. But I just point out two things. One is that, as has been mentioned, SAARC has struggled largely because Kashmir, Pakistan has basically held almost every issue hostage to Kashmir. And whether you want a preferential trade agreement, whether you want the connectivity understandings, it's all ended up with Pakistan has said first Kashmir, then we worry about this. So India effectively said, all right, in this government, we'll abandon SAARC for the time being and go to BIMSTEC, which cuts out Pakistan. But Modi had laid out, but then government has changed the status of Kashmir and then effectively has said the future of Kashmir is no longer even a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. It is simply an Indian domestic concern. And Modi laid out, if you saw in some of his earlier speeches, that I'm prepared now to have a new relationship with Pakistan that will focus on economics, on trade, on development issues, common concerns, but it will no longer talk about Kashmir. So if you're prepared to accept this, then I'm prepared to dialogue. So in effect, using the coronavirus, he's offered Pakistan an option. This is a chance for us to re-engage on SAARC, minus Kashmir, if you accept this new sort of agenda that I've laid out before you. And this is a politically acceptable way to do so. So let's see where this goes. So this is it's a positive sign that Pakistan may be now prepared to consider that type of an engagement in which Kashmir is no longer part of the agenda, if you wish, between India and Pakistan.
Okay, all right. Time now to get closing comments with the way forward. And I've got some news as well coming in that the meeting will be or the video conference will be at 5 p.m. on Sunday, which is tomorrow. Right. So closing comments on that note, Ambassador.
Very good. I think this is, things are moving fast because the Prime Minister made this proposal only last evening. And by today, it has been welcomed. It has been very positively and warmly welcomed by all the leaders, except what you were saying, just now, because from the Pakistan Foreign Office, it said that SAPM, Special Scientific Advisor to the Prime Minister on Health, will participate. So I think we'll have to see, but I would tend to agree with Pramit that if all the other heads of state government are participating, then Imran Khan will also be participating. I think way forward is in terms of best practices. Now, Rajan mentioned about the very draconian measures that China had taken to lock up everyone in Wuhan, 16 million people. Now, that is not the only way to deal with it. There are many other ways. And India's own sort of, sui generis system to which I referred in terms of social distancing, isolation, travel restrictions, etc., etc. There are so many other ways.
Right.
So what is it? And since, again, Rajan had mentioned about the large degree of uniformity in the countries in South Asia, in a high population, large population, similar level of development. So I think India's experience would be extremely useful and helpful to these countries. So I think we need to see what are the best practices, look at some of the other countries, look at our own past experiences, as I mentioned, with Nipah, with the swine flu and others.
And put our best foot forward.
But put the best foot forward and listen to what the others have also been able to do and achieve. And also, last point here, that we have been able to isolate the virus also. So in terms of how it is to be treated, I think India in this region definitely and otherwise also is best placed to sort of take this forward. So I think some discussions on that as to how the treatment also going forward will need to be worked out.
Okay. All right. Professor, quick closing comment from you.
I'll tell you what was heartwarming about the news that you gave is that people are saying that this disease is moving very fast. But I think SAARC has moved very fast because tomorrow there is a meeting at 5 o'clock and that's very heartwarming news. The second is, I quite agree with Ashok that India and South Asian countries will be innovative and find their own ways of isolating this virus and people who are affected by it. And we need not be necessarily brutal, but we can be so persuasive. And India is very good at it because of 70 years, that's what we have done. We can be very persuasive and achieve this task. And crisis times, I want to re-emphasize, India has always performed better than non-crisis. So I think it will all work. And I completely endorse this move. And I wish all the kind of heads of the states and governments of this SAARC all the best, because this is one more chance of re-engaging with each other and getting together.
Okay, all right. And Pramit, close the show for us with a quick concluding remark.
I mean, our basic strategy in handling coronavirus has to be trying to stop it from entering our borders. But the borders have now been breached. So we are now basically waiting to see whether or not we'll experience that exponential growth in viral attacks that other countries have experienced already. But without SAARC, it cannot work because 3 of the members, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan, have effectively open borders with us.